Great. So we're really excited that you were able to make the time to join us. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from. As we get started, I'd love to hear from you. You should be able to reach us in both the chat and the Q&A function. But just to test this and make sure it's working, open up the chat. Love to just maybe introduce yourself or where you're joining us from. But we'd love to hear from you. What is your biggest data pain point right now? So I'll get us started. My name is Leanne Davis. I'm a managing researcher at Education Northwest and thrilled to have you join us today. And thank you so much to Austin and Pam for joining us for this webinar on supporting students' basic needs with case management. This webinar is part of a series of webinars and conversations that we're hosting at Education Northwest, where we're either introducing kind of new research related to student basic needs, or we're introducing new tools and promising practices that we think are going to be able to help you as you're working with students to supporting their basic needs. So I'm joined by a couple of folks here today. Austin Buchan is the Senior Vice President of College Possible, and he's going to be providing an overview and a demo of a really cool tool that they've created called Copilot. And Pam Blumenthal, who's the Director of Affordable Rents for College Students, joining us from Portland, Oregon. She's going to talk about how they're using this tool or thinking about using this tool to help with some of their case management. So one thing that I just want to start with before I kind of turn it over to my colleagues is that one of the reasons why we're excited about this is that it really aligns with this kind of a third goal that we have. At Education Northwest, we created a basic needs implementation rubric. It's a self-assessment rubric that was based off of research that our team conducted through years of evaluating ECMC's Basic Needs Initiative. And this type of tool really aligns with the third goal, which is provide targeted case management to help students navigate and access basic needs resources and services. One of those key indicators that we're looking for is a case management system. We're also looking for ongoing follow-up with students. So being able to utilize a low-cost, accessible tech solution like Copilot can really help you build out a case management system that will allow you to engage in kind of targeted follow-up and ongoing communication with the students that you're meeting with. So we'll share more about that later in a way for you to access that if you wanted to take a look at the rubric and kind of learn more about that. But for now, I think we'll get started with the webinar. Here's welcome and intros from me. We're going to turn it over to Pam, who will talk about leveraging technology to support students at College Housing Northwest. Then I'll turn it over to Austin, who's going to give us a demo of the Copilot Student Success Information System. And then we have plenty of time at the end for this panel conversation. So we're in a webinar format, so the questions will need to come into us through chat or through using the Q&A function on your, it should also be showing up on your screen, but please put questions in as you have them. We'll take a look at those as we go, and it will definitely save plenty of time at the end to be able to answer your questions and have further conversation about this tool and the promises of this tool. And with that, I will turn it over to my colleague, Pam.
Thanks, Leanne. Hi, everybody. I'm Pam Blumenthal. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the director of the Affordable Rents for College Students program at College Housing Northwest. And I wanted to just give you a little bit of background on our organization because it is pretty unique. We are a nonprofit student housing organization that started over 50 years ago in Portland. Actually, Portland State University students started it as a student co-op, and then it evolved into a nonprofit. And a little bit of facts here on this slide about us. It's unique in that we own property and we keep our barriers as low as possible for students. And we've been operating for a long time, but in the last 5 years or so have really started evolving to try to meet students' needs for those who are housing insecure and houseless. We can go to the next slide. So as I mentioned, we're a housing provider and property manager, and then we also have built properties, and we purchase properties and develop them. In the last 3 years, we've purchased 3 new properties, and we're currently working on an exciting hotel conversion that will be supporting our Mount Hood Community College students, and it's opening in the fall. And then we got that hotel through a grant. We can talk about that another time if you're interested, but it's a interesting model. And the ARCS program, the Affordable Rents for College Students program, which I'll just be referring to as ARCS, started in 2020, where before I came to the organization, and what the point of ARCS is to provide subsidies for students who can't afford to live in our properties. Is we keep our rents below market, but still out of the range of affordability to a lot of students. With the program comes case management, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So I think we can go to the next slide and tell you a little bit about how ARCS works. So there are minimal barriers, as were stated here. Students must be enrolled at least half-time and then referred by a partner. They have to be in good academic standing and meet our general rental criteria. Our partners are the community colleges in our region, as well as Portland State University. And then we have 3 nonprofit partners that also refer. Because we have limited space, unfortunately, students can't self-refer at this time, but maybe we'll get there at some point. When I started 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, we had 18 students getting subsidies, and today we have 106 in the program. So it's growing quickly. Students get personalized support. So that's the case management piece, which we'll be talking about a bit here. So we have staff that have caseloads that are checking in monthly, that are able to provide emergency resources. And the subsidies are 50 to 100% depending on the need. We have our funding, which is coming mostly from government funding at this time, but we also have some grants, and are growing our connections to funders to be able to sustain the program. And I think the next one will give you some data on where we're at as of this. I guess this was last week's data. So these colleges are down at the bottom are Portland Community College, Portland State, Mount Hood Community College, and Clackamas Community College. And those are the properties that our students are living in, and some of the demographics. And just wanted to give you a snapshot of that. And then I can talk, I guess we can just stay on this slide. Or you can, I don't know if you want to, I was just going to talk about why we came into Copilot, how we learned about Copilot, and that data is obviously a really important piece of what we do. Right now, we're using Excel spreadsheets, and we'll be beginning Copilot probably in the next month. The way it came about is that we got a grant from the ECMC Foundation to really create our data infrastructure and build our systems so that as we grow, as I mentioned, we're growing pretty quickly, that we're able to tell the story of what's happening in our program and for our students. And we started with myself and 1 other staff in the program, and now there's 5 of us. And so, and it's, I expect it to continue to grow. So the grant from ECMC helped us to find a contractor to support us finding the right tool and that could work for us data wise. And so I met Austin, and he provided an amazing demo, which I thought, wow, this could really be an incredible opportunity for us at not a lot of cost to develop something that's really customizable um, and that would meet our needs. So I've asked my team, who's been working closely on this, what's they're most excited about this, being able to have this database and to build our connection to what's happening with our students. And there's lots of components. And Austin, I don't want to take anything away from what he's going to talk about, but the fact that it's customizable, that the data is live across a system, so that if you change things in one place, it shows up across the system. I think that the notes and the log and the fact that we can text message and email from the system is a game changer. So as we've added staff into our program, we've had to, students have moved within caseloads, and it's difficult for new staff to necessarily understand what's happened and the communications that have happened. So in Copilot, we're going to have the ability to really see a history of communication, which, as people go on vacation or people transition out in my team, will really be able to see the history of engagement with students and what's going on. And that's going to be really awesome. I think it's going to help in the day-to-day work, cut down on duplicating documentation across systems, which is going to be really great. And it will really give a holistic view of the students, kind of in a snapshot for us, and also have these be able to create reports, dashboards, all the things. So Joy on my team said that she felt like this is a great opportunity for us to be doing program evaluation in real time, so that we can really see what our impact is at any particular time. So I think that's all I'm going to share. I'm sure I missed some things, but I just really want to say that data to me is important programmatically, obviously, so that we know that we're doing the right thing. It also is not news to anybody, a big deal for funding. So we want to be able to be very responsible with the funding that comes to us, and to be able to tell people this is the impact that your resources have provided, and tell future funders, this is what will happen if you are able to support our growth. So, Leanne, did I cover the things?
I think that's it. Great, Pam.
Okay.
Thank you so
Here.
much for that. Just for sharing um, the background and how you came to both find the tool and what you're hoping that this is going to help you solve for. And I also really appreciate the way that you brought in those quotes and examples from your staff too. Now I'm really excited to turn the mic and the screen over to Austin to share a little bit more about this tool, give us a demo to see what it looks like. I think it's Pam, that was such a helpful setup as we go into this.
100%. Thank you, Pam. Thank you, Leanne. I'll share my screen in a second, but I feel like as soon as I start sharing my screen, our eyes start training on the data system. I just want to do a little bit of an introduction, say hello, tell you a little bit about the history, not just how Pam and I met, but how we've worked with about 100 partners across the country over the past decade, which is pretty wild. We're having our 10-year Copilot anniversary in just a couple of months. I just realized as I logged onto our webinar. So we've been doing this for a good while, but it's a real pleasure to be here. My name is Austin Buchan, as Leanne said, Senior Vice President at the nonprofit organization that owns and operates and deploys Copilot, which is called College Possible. That's a really important part of our story, which is where I actually wanted to start before I show you the tool, which I promise I will do in detail. And we'll have some good Q&A and kind of open discussion about this as y'all have questions. So please, as I'm running through things, jot down your notes or drop them in the chat, and we'll do that Q&A at the end so you don't lose them, because there's a lot to kind of get through. So, but before I do all of that, I wanted to start just to talk about my own personal story and then College Possible. I've been doing college access and college success work my entire career, so about going on 16 years, and it's my 16th academic year with this organization doing this work. I moved to Austin, Texas. Shout out Austin Community College peeps. I saw a whole army of y'all on the line. Worked with Austin Community College. Y'all may know us before. We've actually merged two nonprofits, College Forward, which was based here in Austin and doing great work in Texas, merged with College Possible about 3 years ago. And Copilot was all a part of that mix. So the organization that's behind this technology and data tool is doing very similar work to what you are. So I like starting with this just by kind of comforting you all. We're not some giant ed tech company who's pushing this thing out to anyone and everyone who wants it. Truly, if you want and love this thing, call us. If it's not a good fit, no worries. At the end of the day, this is really a mission advancing tool for our organization. College Possible has been around about 25 years now, and we have worked historically with about 120,000 students, providing near peer coaching services to students both to and through college. So you'll see some of the functionality that I'll show you through Copilot that is a reflection of that, because we built this tool not to share with the world, but actually initially to solve our own problems. Just like Pam said, we were using Excel spreadsheets and some other third-party software that frankly we hated, but we kind of bent it until it broke as we were growing. We were serving just a few hundred students in our early days. Today, we serve around 25,000 students per year. So just to note, kind of add color to what Pam was saying about their level of scale, one of the great things about Copilot and the system that it's built within, which is Salesforce, which hopefully I'm sure some of y'all have used Salesforce in other jobs or your current job are familiar with that world, will be looking at a good deal of Salesforce work. Copilot is built natively inside of Salesforce. So it is one and the same. We loved Salesforce as a product about 10 years ago when we started building this thing for ourselves. As the name implies, Salesforce is not built for the education sector. It was built to help track sales relationships. But there's a reason it's the leading cloud CRM system in the world. It's because it's really easy to use. I'm a sociology major. Shout out if anybody else is. Philosophy minor. Super marketable skills. Look at me now. Working at a great nonprofit. But it was. I had no background in tech myself or IT. After a few weeks of looking over the shoulders of our Salesforce consultants in our early days, I was able to go in and customize and build this thing to really make it walk and talk. And this could be true for you as well. So the approach we take with all of our partners is exactly the one that I got to experience when we were first getting started, which is get going, get our partners comfortable, and then kind of turn the keys to the kingdom over to you all to do whatever you want from there on. Of course, we'll check, and we're a continued resource for all of our partners. But that's the whole point of this, is to empower you all to help really capture the data. I loved what your colleague Joy said, Pam, of this is really about program evaluation in real time. I've also done 10-year randomized control trials, which is not in real time. There's a 10-year lag. We need tools in this line of work for case management to make decisions quickly and proactively. And that's the ultimate spirit and real core mission of what Copilot is supposed to be doing for both us and all of our partners. So with that little introduction, I will now attempt to share my screen. And we'll look at the darn thing.
That's working. Thank you.
Look at that. Look at that transition. And I've got another monitor, y'all. I'm looking over at my other screen here. So I was looking at the chat as you all were talking, and I saw a lot of conversations and kind of points around making sense of the data and visualizing a lot of the data that's flowing in and out of your organization. So I'm actually going to start with that end in mind. I usually end with this. Every data point that I'm going to walk you through at the end of the day is another data point that you all are needing to visualize in some way, shape, or form. So everything that we will look at is able to be reported on and then converted into a dynamic dashboard. As Pam said, if I have a colleague who right now is logged into Copilot, updating and working with a student, if I refresh this page right now, my dashboards in real time will reflect those changes. Unless, of course, I put some filters on it that prevent that from happening, right? So I just want to kind of end with this, right? Because when I log into the system as an SVP, but even as an entry-level case manager who's logging in maybe in the first month on the job, this is also what they see. Some of y'all might be, as I'm walking through this, thinking like, oh my gosh, this is too much. There's a lot going on here. To which I would say yes, and don't let it overwhelm you. We can toggle these features and data points on and off as it makes sense. And like I said, the idea as we're working with all of our partners is to create kind of a one-stop shop, digestible format of your entire program. So you're not having to scrounge around through Excel spreadsheets, other systems, everything that you want to know about your individual student or your program at large is right here, kind of at your fingertips. Like I said, it's been an absolute game changer for us as practitioners as we've been using this, and we've seen that replicated out, like I said, for over 100 partners. The other thing that I want to say kind of on the front end in terms of the types of organizations we work with, because you may see yourself in maybe more of Pam's story as an organization that's really scaling up, really from the ground level, kind of going with some big ambitions to go from, can't remember the exact number, but 50 students to 100 to maybe a couple thousand over the next few years. We have tons of organizations that fit that mold. We were one of those organizations. You also might be comforted to know that we have higher education partners, colleges and universities who are using Copilot. Houston Independent School District has used Copilot to run their entire college access and career programming with around 600 staff and users and about 200,000 students that they're managing. I give light to that just to say we can accommodate a lot of variety of where you are and meeting our partners where they are within the system that we've built. All right, so with all of that, I'm going to kind of jump right into some of the core features here. As quickly, I'll be doing a little bit of fast talking here. As everyone is noting in the chat, this is going to be recorded. So if you need to go back and refer to anything that I talked about, you can do that. Or of course, at the end, you can reach out to me personally. We can set up some one-on-one time with you and your other teammates to go deeper into your organization, maybe your specific needs or follow-up questions you might have. All right, so with that, don't kill me. I'm not the biggest Taylor Swift fan in the world, but here she is. She's our test student record. She is not a College Possible student. We're gonna pretend like she is. So Taylor is really living in our system as a contact record. I'm going to be spending almost all of my time within these two tabs. Hopefully you can see well, accounts and contacts. In the Salesforce business world, an account would be maybe Apple Computers, right? The institution which an individual is affiliated. A contact is anyone with a pulse, right? This is any individual that you're trying to track a relationship with. For us in our universe, that means high school students, students who are transitioning to college as first time in college students, active collegians who are traversing both across the 2-year, 4-year, and graduate space and into their first job. So I'm going to spend most of the time, most of the functionality we look at is on this contacts tab. So a student contact record is what we're looking at here. And first and foremost, I just want to kind of note the look and feel of this interface. As Pam said, we were also using Google Docs and Excel spreadsheets. Not exactly the most user-friendly on the eyes. It has its own purpose, which I'll talk about later on. I have a newfound love for Excel post Copilot. But really, we wanted this to look and feel very intuitive, web-based, right? If you've used any sort of basic website, a lot of the features that you'll see within this are going to be pretty much mirrored to kind of your online experience. And from a visual page hierarchy, everything that I could want to know about a student as like your case manager is literally located in what you're looking at right now. I could zoom out maybe a little bit more to add some more functionality. All of my student details from their documents, I'll go through these in more detail, our text exchanges, their college applications for those of you who might be working with students transitioning to college, their course enrollment, their degrees and certificates that they've gathered along the way, their employment as they're working their way through college and then beyond, their attendance around events, financial aid packages, their scholarships, their semesters and their transcripts, the curriculum you might be deploying. All of this is nestled within the singular page layout where at kind of a moment's notice, I can log in from a mobile device, from my computer, from my iPad, and I can access this securely and make updates, edits, and run reports. So I'll come back to some of those key features I just kind of brisked through really quickly. But before I do that, just kind of give you a feel for, this is her home page, right? This is an individual student record. Every student in your program will have something that looks and feels similar. So all that basic kind of static data that we're tracking on students, their contact information, maybe their ethnicity, demographic information is nested here. And you can see these are just kind of easily expandable tables that we can open and close just to keep training our eyes on the stuff that matters. as much as possible, right? So this is some of your standard information that we're tracking. Pam alluded to this one feature that is so important that we actually pulled it out of this top area and plopped it over here on the right side, which is all of our case manager notes. You can call them what you want. They're activities, engagements, any interaction that our staff, your staff might be having with a student or a group of students, we can log in one fell swoop right here on the right side of the page. So every time, just for example, let's say that I just set up an in-person meeting. You can see that I can categorize with some simple click downs, right? Who initiated this? This is a really fascinating thing that we can report on later. The number of outbound versus inbound cases or engagements that we're having with students. So we'll say this was an outgoing engagement. I'm the one who wanted to set up this in-person meeting. It was successful. This may seem like a small thing, but it turns out years later, after doing all this data categorization, we can label the types of conversations. This is trying to put a little bit more quantitative feel to a very qualitative experience, which is working and talking with students one-on-one. So we can categorize the general themes of what our conversations were, and we can put a little bit of a qualifier on how long these engagements happened. We didn't used to have this data point, which again seems like a small thing, but actually is pretty huge, because when we're running reports, it's like, oh my God, we had 10,000 interactions with students. Well, some of those may have been a singular text exchange. They could have been a 30-second phone call. We had no way to kind of delineate between what we were looking at from a data perspective. And then of course we can capture our personalized notes. So, we talked about career work and the need to track down parents' tax info for FAFSA. Right, we can do a quick save on that, and that's just going to be logged. Every one of those is getting logged and banked to her individual record. Again, everything we're looking at here from an individual student or a collective perspective can be reported on in mass later on, and I'll show you how that works in a little bit. So that's just you saw how quickly I was able to just do that engagement logging that we just talked about here. Pam also alluded to this, so I want to just kind of note on the front end here, which is that everything I'm showing you in Copilot is customizable from the look and feel. If you don't like this stuff here, you want to move it down farther on the page, you want to remove it entirely because you don't do it, we can do that. If you see something in here in terms of the types of data points that you're trying to collect, or maybe you don't like my pick list that I created in Copilot for you all, and you want to add values to these pick lists, the multi-pick lists, whatever it is, we can do those customizations into it. So adding new fields, adding new tables, changing page layouts, and recategorizing 100% is in your scope, and something we try to do as much as we can on the front end before we go live. This is what we're doing with Pam and her team right now. Tell us what we've missed. Let's get it rounded out before we launch this out to your entire team. I'm seeing some questions in here around integrations. I'm doing double time demo and kind of monitoring the chat line here. I'm going to talk about this. Maybe we can go into more detail in the Q&A. Salesforce is really famous for being very technically easy to play with other systems. So if you're using Target X, even Excel spreadsheets, or maybe a larger larger SIS system within your college or your nonprofit, we have really, it's sometimes complicated depending on how much we want to get those data systems integrated. There's always a solution. I'll just use Houston Independent School District as my example. They had 9 different systems that we had to integrate to actually sunset and roll that data set into Copilot. And we were able to do that in the course of a few months together. So we can do some very simple, or we can do some really complex data integrations if you want Copilot to be kind of your standard center and source of truth for your student record keeping. So in addition to everything I'm doing here, again, I'm going quickly so we can have time at the end to really dive deep together and maybe some more specifics that you're interested in. I'm going to skip over some of the high school pieces. I think some of y'all, I know Austin Community College in particular has a lot of work they're doing on the front end, working with graduating seniors from high school who are matriculating. There's a whole suite of information in here that we can track on high school students, but I'm going to presume that that's going to be less important for most of y'all. So I'm going to skip over some of the high school data. For now, we can come back to it in Q&A if helpful, and really talk about some of these other features. Again, seems like a really basic thing, but tracking all of our students' documents as they're traversing through this exceptionally bureaucratic experience that all of our students have to deal with going to and through college can be a bit tedious. We've created just a one-stop shop document solution where we can track all of our students' documents that we have permission to track, of course, that we can log And again, if there's a transition in case manager, which as we all know is very common in this line of work, that continuity of the data, whether it's documents from her FAFSA 3 years ago, her transcript 5 years ago, we can keep that continuity on a singular student record and just reassign that case manager as appropriate. Courses taken. So I'm not sure how important this is for most of y'all, but we have the ability to track students' individual courses semester to semester. Again, this is typically something we do through integration, or if you can get that from your larger SIS, we can take that CSV file and just push it over in mass. Data transference within Salesforce is really fun and really easy. So it's drag and drop experience where you can match and mass import data. As long as you can get anything in an Excel or a CSV format, you can shove it right back into Salesforce. It's pretty great. Degrees and certificates. Again, this is kind of the later stage of course. As students are stacking up credentials, certificates, diplomas, we can track the exact time and the details of those diplomas year over year. Employment is a huge one for our students. I'm sure for yours as well. Most all of our students are working at least part-time, if not full-time in most cases. So this becomes really important, honestly, just for managing the logistics of when do I need to reach out to my student? Probably not these hours because I know they're working at Subway and they're picking up their sister from school right after that. So helps keep track of all those logistics just to kind of maximize our outreach efforts. Attendance. We have a really fun and I think pretty robust attendance tracking. So feature that we have in here that you can do either as an individual student, but really what we try to use this for is more of the event management. So any sort of event you might be doing on campus for a specific set of students, you can mass manage all of that attendance in a pretty easy to use and kind of fun way here. So just for example, if you're using let's say you have a big FAFSA workshop that you're trying to do, you can create a master an event record. So we can say FAFSA fall event. All right, this happened. See these fun fields, all pretty straightforward. And then within this record, we can establish our roster based on a number of criteria. So this is actually a custom built. I will note, we try to avoid coding stuff wherever we can. This is one of those rare exceptions where we actually coded a solution because it's a pretty neat and pretty ubiquitous. And we wanted to have a little bit more features and functionality than Salesforce has out of the box. So I can come in here and say, I want all of my students who are at Austin Community College, I'm keep using y'all, Riverside campus, because that's where we hosted this event. I can do a quick filter. I can apply those students to my roster and I can mark their attendance of whether or not they attended or not, save that, and then boom, it goes out to all of the individual student records the other direction. So you can see it student by student, or you can say, what was my attendance rate for that specific FAFSA event? Everything in here is two directional, which is really fun. So as long as you're getting that data talking to each other in the system, you can report on it on the individual level or the group level. Again, flying quickly, y'all. Financial aid, huge part. We have a whole feature in here of just tracking the process of an individual FAFSA application record all the way from conception to completion, hopefully. So again, something we can easily do in here just with these simple data points we've added in, kind of following that same chronological order. Once the student's done, they get their financial aid award. We can track individual financial aid packages for Taylor Swift. I think she's probably doing fine. Self-financing that allows us to track, again, semester to semester, year over year, financial aid packages. This is a hugely important tool for our coaches who are working frontline, especially as we're transitioning caseloads, because we're getting a ton of advice, consultation around debt load and grants and repayment terms, and just kind of getting ready for that as students are getting ready to exit. I know this is very kind of true for you all as well as practitioners, given the demographic of students you're working with, the sensitivity and the importance of the financial health of all of your students going through this experience. So we can track, again, like I said, line item level financial aid semester to semester. For a lot of partners, this is a little bit of data overkill, totally understandable. But I just want to note that this is here. You can track those student aid reports year over year. And like I said, aggregating the cumulative debt a student might have, the cumulative grants that they have won over the years, the cumulative scholarships. And there's some really fun stuff going on in here that's actually another neat feature of Salesforce where you can do a little bit of math inside of the system. So as I'm logging in and adding line items to the student's financial aid package, on my master page here, it is actually aggregating based on the type of information that I'm putting in here, right? So this is a private scholarship. This is the Dell Scholars Program, right? Again, all this stuff is customizable. We can add all of this information in. They got 3,000 offered. They accepted 3,000. See if I got everything. Once that's added in here on this page, that dollar amount is then rolled up to the free money category here. So you can probably follow the logic here. We're doing this year over year in mass. You can see how the kind of profile of a student's financial progress is taking shape over the years. Get back to Taylor's record. All right. Scholarship management, big one. Not sure again how important it is for each of y'all as individuals. Huge piece of our work. A lot of our partners use the scholarship feature to track in mass different scholarship opportunities they can warehouse within Copilot. And then, of course, as students are getting awarded those scholarships, they can flag them and obviously kind of convert them to one scholarships for that student. We didn't used to have this peeled out. It used to be kind of nestled in the financial aid package, but just given how much work goes into the scholarship process year over year, both in high school and in college, we kind of wanted to make it a little bit more robust, and so we did. The other piece here, and this is maybe a big piece, maybe something a little bit more technical in terms of the data integration to your current student information system. Having access and ready access to your students' fall transcripts and spring transcripts as you're working, for me as a former practitioner with students, was absolutely massive. As an outside nonprofit, we struggled to get this information from, I think we have about 1,200 colleges and universities represented across our entire student population. So you can imagine what it's like tracking down transcripts. You all will have far fewer issues tracking this information down, but I did want to just note this feature, right? This would be something you could maybe mass import once a semester with your registrar's office and have that live and coexist within Copilot. And it's all the standard stuff here, y'all. I don't need to kind of belabor this. We're looking at GPA, we're looking at credits attempted versus earned, withdrawals that may be affecting different financial aid. So tons of stuff that we can do here. Obviously, this becomes really important downstream. I saw some things in the chat around, well, yeah, but what's the importance of all this data if we're not kind of correlating it to outcomes, or in some cases lack thereof, right? And this gives us a good linchpin as one of our primary milestones as practitioners, or our students returning to college. Obviously is a huge, if not the most important piece that we are monitoring day in, day out. I'm sure you all are as well. Having that data coexist with all of the case manager note data allows you to start doing some more intelligent analysis to say, is there a correlation between this type of student with this sort of academic profile who is engaging with our advisors or case managers in this way on their continued enrollment? So we have all these variables in the system. We have some real powerful tools now within Salesforce itself that allow us to start answering those questions. So again, this is something that may be kind of how we get at this data, as most of you all are working at colleges, maybe a very specific use case, but it is just a critical piece of where that data is warehoused here. Last but not least, and there's a lot of stuff I'm not going to get to just for the sake of time here, but I wanted to note just this milestones object. Milestones, for lack of a better term, is our curriculum. We keep this blank because every nonprofit, every college partner, high school partner has their own set of kind of curriculum or critical student milestones that they are proactively pushing out to students that they see as kind of key indicators of student success ultimately. So this is your warehouse for that. This is something that we will work with you on to kind of pre-populate before you get going in any academic year. And then you can just manage throughout the entire school year. So as you can imagine, I think for us, we have 19 critical high school senior milestones. We have another 24 for the college freshman year that we're kind of coaching around as we're engaging with students to keep us a little bit more focused in our conversation. And again, like everything else I've shown you, you have the ability to go in here and manage it, their progress against the specific milestone. And you can imagine on my home dashboard page that I showed you right out of the gate, a lot of functionality around dashboards and milestones. How are we progressing? Again, let's use my high school dashboard as an example, right? How many of our students have applied to college successfully across what different record types? And where are we missing, right? Here are some students who are in the red that I might need to click into and go have some subsequent conversations with. All right. Take a little breath here, and I'm going to kind of reorient. A lot going on here. Pam noted two really important things. We have been really selective in terms of other third-party partners that we have chosen to put a lot of skin and sweat equity into in terms of integrating our solutions. Pam alluded to two really important ones. Number one is our ability to text within the system. It's pretty damn cool, you guys. Like, this just did not exist. I mean, hell, texting didn't exist when I first started really working with students. So the fact that we can now log into a system like this and go to our SMS solution Our SMS partner that we love and we've worked with for years is a company called Mowgli, like from the Jungle Book. And what Mowgli enables us to do is mass create and mass send texting messages to students from within Copilot. The cool thing about this is that those are intelligent messages. So as students are responding back, they pop back automatically into the student's profile, right down here into the Mowgli section. So a coach, that's what we call our folks, will be typing here in their system, and it's actually shooting out as a text. And as students are responding back, it's getting logged here. This data is also getting logged. So if you're curious about your SMS engagement rates or how certain messages are landing versus others, you're able to report on this from within Copilot as well. Pretty powerful stuff. Probably not more importantly, equally as important is this the tedium. I'm literally, back in the day, we used to individually text our students from our personal or work devices. It was just maddening. And it would be the same thing. Don't forget to do the FAFSA. Don't forget to do the FAFSA. We can now schedule out mass campaigns to students, and they can accommodate some pretty high volume. Like I said, Houston ISD has sent out, I think, 7 million text messages in a single given year. And it's all pre-populated. It's something they front end. A lot of our partners will do over the summer. They say, what do we want to do? Let's lock it in. And then they don't touch it for the rest of the year. Those messages are going out. As those messages are being responded to, they're getting redirected to the appropriate person inside the house, and we can keep going from there. So again, happy to talk more about that. The other one I think is really relevant is around forms. So whether it's an application that you have students filling out or just a survey, I mean, anything that might be in form nature, there's a great integrated solution. There's a few different options we've used, but the one that we use quite a bit is called Form Assembly, which enables us to create these custom forms within Salesforce, push them out to students. As they're getting filled out by those students, it's automatically feeding back in to both a master form database, but then also to their individual student records. So we can see year over year. For example, we do end of year surveys for our students. How did you like your coach? Are things going well? How are you feeling about school? We can track those changes over time, which is pretty huge. And we're not having to do that outside the system and kind of cross-reference data anymore. It's all right here. And then last but not least, probably the best thing personally for me, both in my role, both as a practitioner, but also as a senior leader of the organization, is the reporting features. Every single thing that I just showed you guys is reportable. You can cross-reference data inside and out. I use this example all the time. It's going to be relevant for my Austin peeps. If I want to know how many of my first generation Hispanic identifying, Latinx identifying students with a 3.0 GPA who went to Del Valle High School, how many of them matriculated to Austin Community College that first fall semester, who then later successfully transferred to Texas State University down the street within 2 years, I can literally build that report and answer that question within about 10 minutes. So I have yet to kind of encounter, there's been a couple of exceptions here and there, but I mean, it is really rare to not be able to ask a question of your program and answer it within the system within a pretty short amount of time. So the features within this have really been, I think, powerful and a game changer for us. And then everything that you're able to do, again, within a report where we can kind of custom build reports, you'll see here in a second if I can get this to pull up, it's all drag and drop. So you're dragging the fields you want to include, you're dragging the columns you want to create, you're dragging and customizing your filters to say, I want these students, not these students from this high school or this college. It's all customizable, and it's all super easy to kind of build as even an entry-level Salesforce user. From there, any data that you can group together in a large set, you can convert into a visual. So you can create these little donut charts, whatever the case may be. There's a series of different kind of chart options that we can include in here that make sense for us. And then from there, once you kind of lock in your reports, maybe you want to run every month, every week, every year, you can save those reports. And instead of having to rebuild them every single time, you just go back, as I just did a second ago, click on that link, and then boom, that dynamic data populates. That is really great for my position today as more of a frontline case manager. It's kind of the exact same use case. So you're building out these different reports that are really relevant to an individual case manager, taking that burden off of them oftentimes. And then we're converting that to actionable visualizations to say, yikes, I have students who have not finished their transfer process, right? I need to go in here and check this out. If I want to intervene, I don't have to go look through the system to find the report. I can just click right into this associated report, and I can see the specific students that are populating that scary 5% number. And then I can come in here and I can say, let me jump into Amy's record. I need to give her a call. Look, looks exactly the same as Taylor's profile. And kind of intervene from there, right? So all of this, like I said, is distillable. It's kind of infinite. We try to make, and what I want to end on here, that I haven't talked about at all, is my incredible team. Every single person that works for Copilot was a former high school or college counselor or worked for us on our direct service side of the work. And it just took a shine to Salesforce and the Copilot and his data and technology, and we scooped them up and transferred them over. So these are people that walk the walk, talk the talk, have done it before firsthand. We take a real hands-on approach, both in terms of the initial discovery, just learning more about you as an organization, and then finally making sure that we're training you, making sure you feel comfortable, and kind of toggling that support up and down based on where you guys are. So some of you might say, we got this, we've got tons of past experience, or we have a really good data person internally, we just need to train that one person up and then we step away. And others might say, we're really lean, we've got nobody doing this. Can we just kind of use College Possible and Copilot to manage our support from here on? We've got all of that. And we've got folks that are working very much within the same universe that we all know and love, who are doing all that technical work with you. So on that note, I will take a breath. I think I did relatively well, Leanne, on time. I'll stop sharing for now. I can share, actually, I'll keep this up in case there's any really specific follow-up questions. Yeah.
Why don't you keep it up and maybe we can get to some of these questions. First of all, I'm so excited to see this, and I'm gonna, as somebody who attempted many, many, many years ago, I feel like when Salesforce was new, younger, attempted to build out a Salesforce platform for the organization that I worked for. It's so exciting to see something like this because there's so many powerful kind of analytics built within this type of tech tool, and you've kind of taken the burden of building and customizing kind of off of the user and it seems like it just allows somebody to go in and leverage all the cool features. So that's awesome.
Thank you. That's the hope. Yes.
And I'm wondering if that gets at, there was a question that was in chat. I'm going to kind of toggling back and forth between chat and the Q&A. Someone asked how this is different than building your own Salesforce recruitment and retention platforms.
Yeah, great question. For some of y'all, that might make sense to do, right? If you have like a ton of in-house super good Salesforce peeps who know how to do all of this and do it well without necessarily costing you a ton more money, great. That could be a great solution for you. The idea is that in my experience, most of us are working with other Salesforce consultants who are coming in. Everything I showed you cost us about $1 million that we had subsidized by people like ECMC Foundation, other foundations. This is really expensive. Like Salesforce consulting work is just expensive work. Anyone who's worked in that space can attest to that. I mean, we're talking $200, $250 an hour. And this is a lot. There's a lot going on here. I didn't show you this, but there's about 300 data validation rules that we have built into the system behind the scenes that you're not seeing, right? So that somebody tries to put a 35.8 GPA instead of a 3.58 GPA, it's going to freeze out that cell and say you made a mistake, right? So there's things like that happening behind the scenes that make something like this, what might seem on face value, really kind of straightforward and simple. Like, heck, why can't I just do that myself? There's more complexity to these things, unfortunately. And that's the whole purpose of what we've tried to do, is just package that up, release it with the idea that might get you 80-85% farther down the road without having to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, which is literally what I've seen have this other like ulterior motive, which is some of these Salesforce companies, I have no shame talking about it disparagingly, will rebuild essentially what Copilot is and charge the same price to their next new customer to basically build the exact same solution they built 6 months ago for another customer. It drives me mad. They're like kind of robbing our industry blind in some of those regards. And so that's the spirit of this. Like I said, though, if you've already got Salesforce like kind of close to the finish line and you've got a really strong internal team who can do this, it may be the right call. And that's just something we can, unpack together as it makes sense.
Yeah. And I think, I don't want to get too much into this, but I think kind of the startup cost for this are a lot, kind of startup and ongoing costs are a lot more reasonable.
They're spread out. I think that's
Yeah.
the idea, right? Is that we got lucky in securing a pretty large grant that we could just kind of, like I said, kind of a 7-figure grant that could knock this out in one fell swoop. Most of our partners aren't in that position. We got lucky. We can spread out those licensing costs over a much longer time horizon, and yeah, year over year,
Right.
it's going to be far, far more affordable.
Yeah, well, I want to do, we have a number of questions in the Q&A, and a lot of these are really great questions around basic needs, but while we're on Salesforce, let's try to get through these pretty quickly, so that we can kind of move off of the Salesforce. So there's a question about licensing. Does every college need a license? Could a district buy a license for colleges to use? Any information to share on that?
Yeah, so I'll talk. This will be relevant to, I think, a few of the questions in here.
Yeah.
Right? So the way Salesforce pricing works is based on the number of users you have logging into the system, not the number of students you're working with. It is a more scalable way because it kind of encourages your own scale, right, as you're working your way through this. So it really depends. Sharing licenses is widely frowned upon. Like they can catch you doing that. So you typically are wanting to purchase a license per user logging into the system to interact with it. A cool thing about Copilot, like this is getting a little bit into the weeds, but there are like a ton of different Salesforce licenses of different varying levels of price based on their functionality and access. By using Copilot and installing it into your system, you can actually get away with using a far, like a 1/6 of the cost license than you would have to buy from Salesforce directly otherwise if you were to build it yourself. So a little bit more on the technical side, but there are some kind of advantages on the licensing side. Now, listen, if you're partnering with a district or another department within your college that is already using Salesforce or has kind of made their way through, there are ways to invite other users into an existing system. And there's a way to install Copilot. So if a district is using, for example, Salesforce to do basic kind of standard state management stuff and compliance stuff, we could download Copilot on top of that, and then you all could get invited in as users into that existing system. We've done, as you can imagine, permutations of kind of all of this over the years. It's definitely technically possible.
Great. So I think that probably addresses the question about colleges that might use Salesforce for fundraising, but not student affairs. If your college has it, you can download Copilot on top of it. You can get a license kind of that way through that existing.
We use Copilot. I mean, we use Salesforce for fundraising as well. So we have the two uses of it. Yep.
Thanks, Pam. Have you worked with the Power of Us program?
Yes. So that is, as someone is noting here, nonprofits and other kind of public sector providers get 10 free licenses from Salesforce by virtue of being a 501c3 or a public entity. I will say that you only get one use of those. So if some random department in your college has already claimed those, you might want to go check because you only get one as kind of per tax ID number. But yes, that's the idea, right? Is that we can mitigate some costs. Hopefully, if you have 10 or fewer staff who are needing to use the system, there won't be any additional costs to Salesforce because we'll get those covered through that free program. And then any incremental license over that amount, like I said, we can buy those cheaper licenses from Salesforce to open up access to Copilot. So yes, it's something that almost all of our partners use, is that Power of Us.
Terrific. I'm going to get into some of these questions around students and basic needs services. So one of them, we've been trying to figure out how to keep track of students who use our various basic needs services and come to events. Can this help?
Yes. So I think, without going into too much detail, kind of the best feature would be in that attendance and event management feature that I told you about. So the chat blocking me here. What we'll just say it was kind of a food pantry event. You can do this, pick the date, whether it's in the future or in the past, and then you can create that roster based on any number of criteria in terms of what students were you expecting to go to that. And then once you do that, you can manage. Let's just see if this works. I'm not sure if we have any. I'll have to do this later, but yes, like we can look at the master list of students who should be there, apply them to this event. I mean, just like an Excel spreadsheet, right? Like, here's my full list of people who are supposed to be there. Did they show up? Yes or no? Any other data you want to track around that event is absolutely something we could include in there, right? So, and then you could look at that in real time, or you could report on it downstream. You could look at it in arrears of like, what was our overall attendance
Right.
rate for the entire academic year. So yes, I think anything around individual or group tracking,
Yeah.
there's an existing feature in here for that.
So you can see it you could see it at the event level if you were to pull up the individual event, but then it would also show up at the individual level. So if you were to look at that student's kind of account, or you would be able to then see which various events they may have attended.
That is correct.
Yeah.
That is correct.
Great. So I think that's kind of ties a little bit into maybe another question here. It says we have students check in at the food pantry. Could we use this to do this? And what would it look like from the student point of view?
Great question. This is a great use case for the form integration I was telling you about. So again, I'll keep using Houston as our example. They had, I can't remember, they're doing some financial aid sort of workshops at their local libraries throughout the city of Houston, and they had all of their staff had iPads that they had set up on location, or a laptop, and they had that form filled out, or sorry, the template form was there on site, and then as students were coming and marking their attendance, they were filling out that form in real time, and that was getting pushed back into Copilot. This was done like thousands and thousands of times in a single day, so it could handle that volume. So I think that would be probably the best solution I'd recommend without knowing the details. But yeah, sort of a on-demand, on-site, real-time recorder of attendance is a good use case for that form integration piece.
Great. I think that probably answers it. And whoever wrote that question, if you have it, if an additional follow-up, just add it back in or add it into the chat, and we'll come back to it. So questions about coordinating with other off-campus partners with data. Can we bring in their info or use this to share data with them? And I'm not sure what the person is asking, because you did share the dashboards, which are a helpful way of being able to share data, but I'm not sure if they're talking about another license.
Yeah, again, that's kind of the annoying thing about all my answers. Like, there's like 5 different ways that we could get to solutions
Right.
of this, but the short answer is yes, absolutely. The huge asterisk of this is like, what sort of data sharing agreements? Let's just assume you've got data sharing agreements and sign off from students and your partners, right? As long as that's checked, the transference of data in and out of Salesforce is one of its strengths. So anything that you have permission to share inside and outside your organization, you can easily extract with security permissions, of course, kind of enabled. You can export anything. So those reports that I was showing you, those templates, you can export into a CSV and just say, here you go. And then they can kind of do with that what they will. Or, as Leanne was saying, if you have a really tight partner, which we do, we have a number of outside partners that we've actually set up logins with kind of limited visibility for them to log in directly into our Copilot system, and then they can do their own thing. Again, tightly managed. I didn't talk about the security at all within this, but this is a great kind of reminder of that. Really robust features. So we have around 600 users ourselves across the organization. We have about 100 different security rules that are governing those 600 users that we've gotten tighter and looser, right, as it makes sense for their use case over the years. So you can assign each individual user a very specific security profile, and then depending on that, it could say like Leanne only has access to these 20 students. We note that when she logs in the system, she only can see those 20 students information. And then even within that, you can say that she have the ability to edit those records, create new records, right? There's that whole feature set you can do. So short answer is yes, data transference is pretty straightforward from a technical perspective. And it's just kind of the nature of that partnership.
Great. And I think that gets at another one of these questions is asking is whether fields can be shielded. So only certain users can see the info or data to protect confidentiality. And I think that's all those different user roles and profiles that you can create.
That's correct. That's correct. Could even kind of show you that as we're going to the next question. What it looks like. on the back end here. So you can create these profiles essentially, and you can assign profiles and roles to individual users. You don't have to do it for every individual user. You don't have to create a new custom thing every single time. You can say, look, there's this, like, see how we have this kind of hierarchy right here?
Yeah, and create like
say-
a type.
Exactly. You have kind of an archetype program officer. You assign that label, and then
Mhm.
all people assigned with that program officer, therefore, then have that privilege or lack thereof.
There's another question about fields, and somebody wants to know how customizable they are. They say, for instance, I'm with a nonprofit workforce development program, so our students aren't receiving traditional financial aid, but can we change these fields to track things like federal or state benefits, like receipt of SNAP or housing vouchers?
Yes, short answer, yes, yes, yes. And relatively easily. So again, this is not coding. I could literally probably do it right now as we're on this webinar together to say, I'm going to create a whole new set of fields for you, associate them to whether it makes sense to kind of nestle them within this financial aid package record, or maybe we need to create a table entirely of its own. So all of these little things up here are basically like tabs on a spreadsheet. So we could create, basically another equivalent of a tab on a spreadsheet that says workforce development. And then within that tab, we have a whole bunch of custom fields. So we can kind of keep that data separate, but related back to the individual students as everything else is. So yes, is the short answer. That's probably something we want to peel back in an initial call to say, tell us what those 10 data points are. We'll say, do we want to put them in something we've already made, or we want to create something unique for just you guys? And then we'll release it accordingly.
I was just going to pipe in, and Joy just piped in because Joy's been working closely with the Copilot team to customize our version. We are doing similar work, but it's slightly different. And like one of the things Joy just showed me the latest version, and for one thing we're looking at acuity of situation for students. So like one of the things that we're tracking is how the acuity of student need. And so we're able to look at how that changes over time and look at caseloads, and based on, how many, high acuity people do our case managers have, that sort of thing. So that's just an example of one of the customizable things that we've done, and there's lots more. But really, it's been working with the team and letting them know what we need, and it's going to be just very suited to our need. So that's what's the coolest thing about it. One of the coolest things.
Can we name the coolest thing? I'm not sure. We would all
Like I've said it
agree
like
on that.
I've said it like 7 times already. Well, this is the coolest thing.
This is the coolest thing. Let's see, we have a lot of students who attend multiple colleges in our city. I have trouble knowing or seeing that right now. So it's hard to coordinate with basic needs folks at other schools. I noticed something about National Student Clearinghouse. How does that work? Could it help?
Yes. Next question. No. Yeah. So I think I said this about our own. So for better or for worse, given our model, so we typically start working with students in high school, and as such, we're agnostic to where they go to college. We give them advice along the way, but as a result of that model, we have students actively attending over 1,000 colleges and universities across the country. So for those of you not familiar with the National Student Clearinghouse, I'm sure all of you have heard of it or used it in the past. It's a wonderful tool. It's kind of the monopoly of tools of where students' enrollment is being tracked. It is an incredibly helpful resource we have at our fingertips, and the mass data reporting back from them can be really cumbersome and tedious to unpack. So there are two different solutions. If you're talking about just a few different campuses, it probably just makes sense to go in to Clearinghouse and pull those records kind of individually. Or you can actually, in working with National Student Clearinghouse directly, you can put in a request every semester or whatever frequency you want to say, here are my students, whatever, it's 200 students that are I want to know where they're attending, and they will, in due time, like 2 months, return back a file and say, here's where they are. So it's good for retroactive reporting. It's not super great on like, I need to know where the student is right now. Can you get back to me? Unless you're looking them up student by student. So there's two features within Clearinghouse that allows for individual student lookups, and there's a more recent one that allows for bulk lookups and bulk reporting. What you're alluding to on our website, so there's that we could talk about, right? That may make the most sense. For someone like us or a large partner that's working with multiple colleges and campuses, we have built out I think we're one of only 2 organizations in the country that has this level of integration with the National Student Clearinghouse, where our Copilot partners can, through Copilot, access what I just described, that mass kind of data reporting, without really doing anything directly with Clearinghouse, and pull all that data automatically back into the system. This is a like kind of hot off the press feature of this current year. And it's massive. It's massive for us. We're doing about, like I said, about 20,000 student record reports from Clearinghouse every semester. And just for us as practitioners, we're now able to just hit a few buttons and within a few days get a significant tranche of that data back. As opposed to waiting months, we can get it really, really quickly.
Okay, so this next question that just popped up is where I was going to. Sounds like the NSC thing would help us see our community college students that transfer and tie that to use of basic needs services.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
think
So
you could connect all of these, right?
totally. Yeah. I mean, again, if you're talking about, regional transfers, which we all know most students are, when they do transfer, transferring kind of within the same geography, it may be faster just to like build a relationship with that registrar's office and say, hey, are they there? And you can just kind of take that data and put it back into Copilot. Or you could go through Clearinghouse, either manually, kind of working with Clearinghouse directly, or you could use our integration system that does it automatically, and kind of pulls it and push it in. Remember that academic semesters table I was showing you?
Mhm.
So this guy right here. So it'll automatically pull in Union College, right? And it'll pre-populate all of this. So you just kind of wake up and log in and say, oh, there they are. And we have the enrollment verification method right here. And you can see that's customizable, right?
Right.
Sometimes not all students are in Clearinghouse, not all colleges. The vast majority use Clearinghouse, but not all of them do. So if someone's not showing up, you may have to call the registrar. You can get some basic enrollment information that's publicly available, or you can have FERPA releases with your student that allows you to get everything, which is what we have. So we have all of our students sign FERPA releases. Allows us to get actual transcripts. That's more manual, but you can see that that's something we could port in either individually or in mass.
Okay. Neat. There's another question here that talks about surveying. So it says we survey students to figure out food insecurity, et cetera. So I imagine this is like a student basic needs survey. How does this help us, or is it just like using Google Forms? So I'm imagining that this question is either is there a way to integrate the survey with this? Is this even a direction we would want to take? Right, because I think there are, schools might use Qualtrics to survey students. They might integrate a survey within their existing student information system, right, so they can connect the survey responses back to administrative data.
Yeah. So again, without knowing the details of exactly kind of how many students we're talking about, existing systems, anything you want to ask a student via a form, we can do an integrated way within Copilot through some of our form solutions. If you already have a solid survey tool, Qualtrics, Google Forms, whatever, and you don't want to mess with that, that's fine. All of those systems also have the ability to convert those form and survey responses into an Excel spreadsheet. And then all you would do in Salesforce and Copilot is you would go to the data import wizard. Great name.
I love
And
that
you would
tech
just,
tools always have these wizards. It means they're going to help you like wave a magic wand and figure it out, right?
yeah.
Pull it out of a hat for you.
This data import wizard thing's awesome. It didn't used to exist in Salesforce. It's, whatever, 6 or 7 years old. But you would just basically, you go to this little wizard and you drag a CSV file into this right here. and then it automatically pairs it. It matches the column headings to the fields in Salesforce, even if you're using it from Qualtrics or Google Forms. It's pretty cool. So you could, as long as the labels are like generally correct, like first name, last name, email, it'll automatically go like, we think you're trying to import here, and then it gives you an opportunity to clean it up, and then you just click a button and it goes and it spits it back out into Salesforce. So even if it doesn't, again, it could be cumbersome to do like a full-blown integrated forms and survey solution. If you've already got a good system, a good process in place, like don't mess with it. The value of doing it within Copilot is that that's another data point you're now warehousing into a singular database, as opposed to having to bounce around. And then you could do these, end of year analytics to say, are students who are filling these surveys with these sorts of responses engaging differently, producing different outcomes, et cetera, right? Like that's the real power of the whole thing, is just consolidating all the stuff you're already doing.
Yeah. Which was why I saved this question for last, about the difference between Copilot, Timely MD, and SingleStop. And I know that Timely MD is a mental health services platform that doesn't do case management, and SingleStop kind of evaluates public benefits for students. And I know they've had some recent evaluations that aren't finding it to be as effective. And I think everything that we've talked about has helped kind of show by Copilot how Copilot is different than those, totally different than those two tools, but wondering if either of you have anything you wanted to add to that.
Well, there's probably like 50 other names we could add to that list, right? Of like different solutions that are out there. I think like the biggest things to focus on, or maybe the key takeaways for this, which is that this is built within Salesforce, which we attached our cart to the Salesforce horse 10 years ago. And I'm damn happy we did, because we get to kind of ride on the coattails of their innovation. I'll be really clear. When you download Salesforce, there's that initial question of why don't we just build this ourselves? When you download Salesforce as like a clean slate, get those 10 free licenses, it is empty. There is nothing related to educate. I mean, they have a little bit of architecture here and there more recently through some of their education solutions, but it's very, very surface level. So what Copilot enables you to do is kind of take advantage of these customizations that we need as case managers, leverage that within the power of this really strong platform that is Salesforce, super data secure, FERPA approved, HIPAA approved. Like there's all this stuff that we just get to kind of glom onto. And they update their user interface for us, every once in a while. It's like, oh, wow, cool. Like we don't have to worry about that as a collective industry. We get to just do that within Salesforce. So there's that. The customization and configuration piece, I think, is probably, hands down what we hear most consistently is something that people really love, because your program could look you might get a $10 million grant next year to go expand your programming, and you build out 6 new service arms. Copilot will be able to accommodate all of that as you're changing and evolving your program, with with decreasing need to reach out to us to do it. So it's like this real, I think, kind of empowering sort of solution. And then just the ability to kind of consolidate solutions within Copilot, I think, are probably the 3 biggest differentiators in terms of the technical piece. And then like my team are the best team planet Earth. They're the greatest humans you'll ever get to know. So there's that piece too. That I think it's hard to find, and we found it. So yeah.
Pam, I'll turn it to you. Yeah.
I'm not really familiar with, I know of SingleStop, but I've never used it, and I'm not familiar with the other one. I think just, and we're still at the beginning of this, but I think what Austin's saying about the customization and the ability to grow and evolve, and to be within an established system like Salesforce, where you're not doing these one-off kinds of changes. I told Austin this when we first met, but I worked at Portland Community College before I came to College Housing Northwest, and we spent a year and maybe $100,000 developing a system that does what Copilot does, and maybe not as well as Copilot does it. And it, again, I'm no longer there. It probably needs to be updated. It certainly needs maintenance, right? And it works, but Copilot existed when we developed it, and if only we had known. So for whatever that's worth.
It's always like my favorite and least favorite thing to hear simultaneously is like my favorite, the absolute best case scenario for Copilot. That's what I'll end on for you all is when somebody says, "Oh my God, we're so glad we talked to you because we just got a quote from at fill in the blank vendor and it's going to cost us $200,000." And I go, "Show me what they're going to do for you." And I go, "Oh my God, Copilot's going to do this 95% of the way there out of the box and only cost you 15,000 or whatever the number,
Yeah.
might be." I mean,
Yeah.
it's typically pretty stark, the difference. And so even if you go out there and you're in this process of looking for other vendors, do it if that's part of your due diligence. And
Mhm.
all I ask is like, just hit me up one more time just to run it by you. And I'll tell you if it's a good, I promise. This isn't like I said, we're not some for-profit company. This isn't keeping the
Yeah.
lights on at College Possible. It's really a mission-based product. And so just keep that front in mind. And my team is trained accordingly to say, go with that, or please hear us out one more time because we think this is going
Yeah.
to save you a lot of headaches.
And well, I'm wondering if, you want to, there's one last kind of takeaway, Pam, if there's one last takeaway that you want folks to share. And I can give you a second to think about it, because I'll just say that you saw me, my mind is blown. I am so impressed by this tool, and having, been around the block for a while, and you see that people and colleges and institutions and organizations do this too. Like, we all want to build our thing. We want to build our own thing. We think it's going to be easier for us to do it in-house, because we have all of these kind of unique features that we need to deal with. But it ends up becoming clunky and cumbersome and outdated and unaffordable, right? And then we end up with these really outdated systems where we're not able to do our best job of serving students, and because we've kind of invested so much into these systems that aren't working for us. So to have something like this that's accessible, mission driven, that really is going to work to help us be able to better understand and serve students and meet their basic needs. It's pretty phenomenal. And I think just all of those integrations that you shared, including with the National Student Clearinghouse, are pretty amazing to see.
Yeah, I think touching on what you said, Leanne, like there were a number of reasons that we needed to find a database, to find a system that is going to work for us. And I think that my expectations have definitely been exceeded, and we haven't even started using it yet. But I think the initial point is, really wanting to be able to tell the story, to have data that tells a story. But what the truth of it is, and this is also in my experience, working in programs with case management for many years, is that you want the people doing the work to be able to do the work as effectively as possible with as least amount of things that distract them from that, including collecting data, including systems being cumbersome, including, having to duplicate, entries in multiple databases, which, is kind of always what happens. But I think that this system will help on so many fronts, but especially that people one. So it'll get our staff to be able to be freed up to do more of what they do really well. So
Thank you for sharing that. And I think that ties this all back to the way that we kicked off this webinar and conversation, where I mentioned our basic needs implementation rubric. And one of the 4 goals in providing targeted case management to help students navigate and access basic needs resources and services. And this kind of getting to what full implementation looks like within this goal is really, I think, having a tool like this and utilizing a tool like this is going to help colleges, institutions, and practitioners be able to get there, to do the work, not do the data work, do the work with students. So thank you all so much for joining us today. I've my contact information is on the screen. There's a QR code if you want to hold your phone up to that, and that will take you to our basic needs page at Education Northwest, which kind of is where we house all of these things. So you can find access to the implementation rubric that I mentioned. You can access recordings of some of the other webinars that we shared, as well as some other resources we've created. We'll post this webinar recording there once we've wrapped up, and we'll also be sending that out to everyone who registered. Pam and Austin, really appreciate you both for joining me today. Both of your contact information is in the chat. Thank you for that. And if there's any last words that you want to share, feel free.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you. Great.
All right. Well, thanks everyone. We appreciate you making the time to join us today. We hope this was helpful and useful.
Take care.
Thanks,
Yeah.
everybody. Take care, y'all.